You've never told anyone about that 3am thought, the one where you wondered if you should leave everything behind and start over. You didn't search for it, didn't type it into any browser, didn't even whisper it out loud to your partner sleeping next to you. Yet 3 days later, your feed is flooded with minimalist lifestyle content, van conversion videos, digital nomad testimonials, and ads for one-way tickets to Portugal. You tell yourself it's coincidence, that the algorithm is just really good at guessing, that maybe you clicked on something weeks ago and forgot about it. But here's what you're not being told. What the engineers building these systems know but will never publicly confirm. The algorithm isn't guessing. It's not even listening to your conversations, though that's the comforting lie most people settle on, because at least it's a violation they can understand. It's doing something far more invasive than that. It's reading the predictive patterns in your behavior that you yourself cannot consciously perceive. It knows the micropauses between your scrolls, the half-second longer you linger on certain images, the imperceptible rhythm of your thumb as it moves across glass, the slight change in pressure when something resonates with you emotionally, even if you keep scrolling, the acceleration of your swipes when you're avoiding something that makes you uncomfortable. And from these invisible breadcrumbs you don't even know you're leaving, it constructs a psychological model of your consciousness that is statistically more accurate than your own self-awareness. Think about that for a moment. The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. Not because it's intelligent, but because you're unconscious. The phone isn't listening to your conversations. It's listening to something deeper. It's tracking the electromagnetic signature of your decision-making process before the decision reaches your conscious mind. Before you know what you want, the algorithm has already predicted it, packaged it, and placed it directly in your path. This isn't science fiction. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is the documented, peer-reviewed architecture of every major platform you use daily. And the implications of this technology don't just threaten your privacy. They threaten the very foundation of what you believe to be free will. Because if something can predict your choices before you make them, were they ever really your choices at all? Or were you just following a script written by a neural network, trained on the behavioral patterns of 4 billion other humans who thought they were choosing freely too? Let's pull back the curtain. Let's look at what's actually happening. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that unseeing, that's where your power lives. In 2018, a declassified research paper from Stanford's Computational Psychology Lab revealed something the tech industry had known for nearly a decade but had carefully avoided publicizing. The study, led by Dr. Mikhail Kosinski and published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, demonstrated that human behavior online follows patterns so mathematically predictive that artificial intelligence can forecast your next action with 89% accuracy based solely on engagement data from the previous 48 hours. Not your search history, not your stated preferences, not what you told the algorithm you wanted, just how long you looked at something. Just the rhythm of your attention. Kosinski's team analyzed the Facebook likes of over 58,000 volunteers and discovered something that made even the researchers uncomfortable. They could predict your sexual orientation with 88% accuracy, your political affiliation with 85% accuracy, your ethnicity, religious views, relationship status, and whether you'd be susceptible to substance addiction, all with accuracy rates exceeding 75%. They could determine if your parents were divorced before you were 21. They could assess your intelligence level and personality traits, all from publicly observable behavior you didn't even realize you were exhibiting. One engineer from the study told MIT Technology Review, off the record, that the most disturbing finding wasn't what they could predict. It was that the subjects themselves, when asked to predict their own traits and behaviors, scored significantly lower in accuracy than the algorithm. People don't know themselves, but the machine does. But what Kosinski uncovered was merely the surface mechanism, the tip of a much deeper architecture. The real system lies in what Amazon's recommendation engine architects call pre-cognitive commerce, a term that appeared in internal documents leaked by a former Oars engineer named Martin Kowalski in 2021. These documents describe a predictive model that doesn't wait for you to want something. It doesn't even wait for you to browse. It identifies what they call precursor states, the emotional and psychological conditions that precede desire, and it manufactures the want before you're consciously aware of the need. Here's how they describe it in their own words. The goal is not to respond to customer intent. The goal is to create customer intent at the optimal moment of psychological receptivity. Read that again. Create customer intent. Ancient Vedic texts speak of prarabdha karma, the unseen momentum of past actions that shapes future outcomes. It's the invisible current beneath your life, carrying you toward destinations you think you're choosing but are actually inheriting from patterns set in motion long ago. Tibetan Buddhists call it dependent origination, the invisible web of causation connecting each moment to the next, where nothing arises independently but only in relationship to everything that came before. What these wisdom traditions understood intuitively through meditation and self-observation, Silicon Valley has now mechanized. They've built a system that reads your karmic momentum, your behavioral inertia, and manipulates it in real time. The algorithm doesn't need to know what you want. It only needs to know what someone with your psychological profile, behavioral patterns, emotional state, demographic markers, and browsing rhythm wanted 60 seconds before they consciously knew they wanted it. And there are now 4.9 billion of you in the dataset. Billions of humans whose every click, pause, and scroll has been recorded, analyzed, and fed into prediction models that have been training for 15 years. You are not an individual to this system. You're a probability distribution. A cluster of behavioral traits that maps onto predictive templates with startling precision. In 2019, a whistleblower from Google's DeepMind division revealed in a Medium post that was quickly taken down and scrubbed from archives that the company had developed what they internally called shadow profiles. Not profiles of what you do, but profiles of what you're about to do. Probability maps of your next 7 days of behavior, updated in real time as new data comes in. The post claimed these shadow profiles were accurate enough that advertising clients were bidding not on who you are, but on who you're becoming. They were buying access to the future version of you. The one who hasn't made the decision yet, but is statistically certain to make it within the next 72 hours. And if they can predict you with that level of accuracy, the question becomes unavoidable. Are you living your life, or are you performing a script that's already been written? Here's how the system actually operates, mechanically, at the level of code and neural networks and data streams moving faster than thought. Every interaction you have with a device generates what engineers call behavioral biometrics. Not what you click, but how you click. Not what you watch, but how you watch it. The pressure you apply to the screen. The angle of your thumb, the micro-corrections your hand makes as it scrolls, the slight hesitation, lasting only 340 milliseconds before you like a post, the speed at which you swipe away content, the acceleration curve of that swipe. Whether you scroll in smooth, continuous motion or in staccato bursts, every one of these data points is captured, time-stamped, and fed into neural networks that have been trained on billions of hours of human interaction. These networks identify patterns that are invisible to human perception, patterns you couldn't see even if you watched a slow-motion replay of your own behavior. They detect what psychologists call approach-avoidance conflict. The moment when your desire and your resistance are in battle, and you don't even know the battle is happening. You see a video of chocolate lava cake being cut open, the molten center spilling out in slow motion. Your scroll rate decreases by 0.3 seconds. Your thumb hovers over the screen. The pressure sensors detect a slight increase in contact force, indicating intention to tap. But you don't tap. You override the impulse. You keep scrolling. The algorithm registers this entire sequence. Interest detected. Desire identified. Conscious restraint applied. It logs this as suppressed intent. It notes the time of day, your recent eating patterns extrapolated from restaurant check-ins and food delivery orders, your exercise app data if you've granted permissions. even your location to determine if you're at home or at work, where social pressure might influence your choices. 30 minutes later, you're served an ad for premium artisan chocolate, not just any ad. The messaging has been optimized based on your specific psychological profile. For you, it's not about indulgence, it's about treating yourself, and you deserve this. Because the algorithm knows that your particular cluster of behavioral traits responds to permission-based messaging rather than pleasure-based messaging. It's not targeting your conscious desire. It's targeting the split-second neurological signature of desire before your prefrontal cortex censored it. It's speaking to the part of you that wanted the cake before the part of you that remembers your health goals had a chance to intervene. Dr. Sarah Benning, a neuroscientist from MIT's Media Lab, has spent the last 5 years studying what she calls limbic marketing. In a 2022 paper published in Nature Neuroscience, her team used fMRI brain imaging to map neural activity while subjects scrolled through social media feeds. What they discovered was disturbing. The algorithm's content sequencing, the specific order in which posts and ads were displayed, triggered dopamine release patterns in the ventral striatum that were nearly identical to those observed in gambling addiction. The same neurochemical signature, the same reward prediction error signals, the same compulsive seeking behavior. But here's where it gets darker. The algorithm wasn't just triggering dopamine release. It was calibrating it. When subjects began to habituate, when their dopamine response began to diminish because they'd seen too much similar content, the algorithm detected this through decreased engagement metrics and automatically shifted its content strategy. It introduced novelty. It increased emotional intensity. It interspersed highly engaging content with deliberately mundane content to reset the baseline and make the engaging content feel more rewarding by contrast. Benning described it in an interview as weaponized intermittent reinforcement. The algorithm was adjusting your neurochemistry in real time to keep you in a state of perpetual anticipation. Not satisfaction, anticipation. Because satisfaction makes you close the app. Anticipation keeps you scrolling. The ancient Chinese text, the Tao Te Ching, speaks of Wu Wei, effortless action arising from perfect alignment with the natural flow of reality. When you're in Wu Wei, there's no friction between your intent and your action. You're not trying, you're flowing. The algorithm has inverted this sacred principle. It creates artificial flow states, manufactured synchronicities that feel divinely timed but are mathematically engineered. It gives you content at the exact moment your brain is most receptive to it, creating the felt sense that the universe is speaking directly to you. You feel seen, you feel understood. You feel like something greater than yourself is communicating through these mysteriously perfect posts that appear right when you needed them. But it's not the universe. It's a prediction model trained on the behavioral exhaust of billions of humans, running on server farms in Oregon and Virginia, optimized not for your well-being, but for engagement metrics that translate directly into advertising revenue. The spiritual experience you're having is a simulation, and the cruelty of it is that the feeling is real, even though the source is not. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between genuine synchronicity and algorithmic precision. So you begin to trust the feed. You begin to outsource your intuition to the algorithm. And that's when it has you. Her name was Claire Donovan. 34 years old, marketing director for a mid-sized tech firm in Austin. Type A personality with a meditation app she downloaded 8 months ago and opened exactly twice. She described herself as someone who had her life together. Good job, good relationship, good apartment. All the markers of functional adulthood. But in March of 2023, she started noticing something she couldn't explain. Every time she felt a specific emotion, not happiness or sadness or anger, but a particular flavor of restless dissatisfaction she didn't have words for, her Instagram feed would shift. It wasn't showing her what she'd searched for. It was showing her what she was about to search for. One evening, after a tense phone call with her mother, one of those conversations where nothing overtly terrible was said, but everything felt wrong, she sat down on her couch with her phone. She felt that familiar tightness in her chest, That sensation of being trapped in a pattern she'd inherited but never chose. She hadn't decided what she wanted to watch, hadn't formed a conscious intention. She just opened the app because that's what her thumb did automatically when her nervous system needed regulation. The moment Instagram loaded, her feed was filled with content about setting boundaries with family. Adult children of emotionally immature parents. Therapies speak about enmeshment and codependency. Videos of people describing relationships with their mothers that sounded eerily identical to her own. She hadn't searched for any of this, hadn't even admitted to herself that this was the problem. The conversation with her mum had ended only 4 minutes ago. Yet here it was, packaged and delivered, as if something had reached into her chest, identified the specific quality of that tightness, and pulled up content mapped to that exact emotional frequency. She sat there, stunned, watching video after video of strangers describing her inner experience with unnerving accuracy. It felt like being seen, but it also felt like being hunted. She started testing it, deliberately. She'd sit with an emotion and open the app. Anxiety about her relationship? Within 3 to 5 swipes, videos about attachment styles and anxious avoidant dynamics. Vague career dissatisfaction she hadn't voiced to anyone? Ads for online courses, entrepreneurship content, testimonials from people who'd quit corporate jobs to follow their passion, existential dread at 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep, spiritual TikToks about awakening, the illusion of the self, and the feeling that you're living someone else's life. Every single time, the algorithm delivered content that matched not her thoughts, but her emotional state. It was as if it had built a mirror of her inner world and was reflecting back not who she was, but who she was becoming. The parts of herself she hadn't consciously acknowledged yet. It felt like it knew me better than I knew myself, she told me when I interviewed her 6 months later. And that was terrifying. Because if it knows me that well, what else does it know? What is it seeing that I'm not seeing? And if it can predict what I'm about to feel, is it predicting or is it creating? Here's the exercise Claire developed, and you can do this right now, right where you are. Close your eyes. Take a breath. Notice what you're feeling, not the surface emotion, the one you'd name if someone asked. Go deeper. Notice the underlying current beneath it, the texture, the temperature, the specific quality of this moment's aliveness or numbness or yearning or dread. Now open your social media feed, any platform. Scroll for exactly 60 seconds. Watch what appears. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Just notice. Does the content match your conscious thoughts, or does it match that deeper current you were feeling? Most people who try this report the same thing Claire did. The algorithm isn't reacting to what you think. It's reacting to what you feel. And if it can sense your emotional state before you've fully acknowledged it yourself, what else is it sensing? What else is being measured, categorized, fed into models, and reflected back to you in a feedback loop so subtle and so constant that you've mistaken it for your own intuition? Claire described it as meeting her digital twin, a version of herself made of data that knew her patterns better than she did. And the unsettling question she couldn't stop asking was, which one is real? The one having the feelings, or the one predicting them? But here's where the framework shifts. Here's where the power dynamic inverts. The system's intelligence is not the source of its control. Your unconsciousness is. Every predictive model, no matter how sophisticated, depends on pattern consistency. Patterns are what make you predictable. Predictability is what makes you targetable. The algorithm's entire architecture is built on the assumption that you will continue to behave tomorrow the way you behaved yesterday. But the moment you become aware of your patterns, the moment you introduce conscious variability into your behavior, the predictions begin to fail. The model starts generating errors. The accuracy drops. Dr. Judson Brewer, Director of Research and Innovation at Brown University's Mindfulness Center, conducted a fascinating study in 2023, examining how contemplative practitioners interacted with algorithmic content differently than control groups. He recruited 200 subjects. Half were experienced meditators with at least 2 years of consistent daily practice. Half were demographically matched controls with no meditation experience. Both groups were given identical phones with tracking software installed. For 30 days, every interaction was recorded. What Brewer found was striking. The meditation practitioners showed 67% less predictability in their engagement patterns compared to controls. Their scroll rates were irregular. Their click-through patterns were inconsistent. The time they spent on posts varied wildly. The algorithm couldn't get a stable read on them, not because they were trying to evade it, not because they were consciously gaming the system, but because they were present. When you're aware of what you're feeling as you're feeling it, when you can watch your own impulses arise without immediately acting on them, you stop operating on autopilot. And autopilot is what the algorithm feeds on. Autopilot is the medium through which it speaks. When you're awake, when you're genuinely present, the algorithm loses its grip. Ancient Stoic philosophers spoke of premeditatio malorum, the practice of anticipating external manipulation and fortifying yourself against it. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal while commanding armies on the Roman frontier, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was speaking to political manipulation, to the flattery of courtiers, to the temptations of power. But the principle is identical. The algorithm is an external force that gains power only through your internal automation. It can only control you to the extent that you are not controlling yourself. Quantum physics offers another lens into this. The observer effect, demonstrated conclusively in the double-slit experiment, shows that the act of measurement changes the behavior of particles. When you observe your own behavior, when you witness your patterns with conscious awareness, you collapse the wave function of probability that the algorithm depends on. You're no longer a predictable trajectory. You're no longer a statistical certainty. You become quantum uncertainty. And uncertainty cannot be monetized. This isn't mystical thinking. This is neuroscience. Dr. Amishi Jha's research at the University of Miami has shown that mindfulness training strengthens the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive control and impulse regulation. When this region is active, you have space between stimulus and response. You see the content, you feel the pull, but you don't automatically react. That space, that tiny gap between seeing and acting, is where your sovereignty lives. That's where free will exists, not as some grand metaphysical principle, but as a practice skill. The skill of noticing before doing. This isn't about deleting your apps. This isn't about going off-grid or living in a cabin in Montana. This is about sovereignty. It's about remembering that beneath the patterns, beneath the predictions, beneath the digital twin they've constructed from your behavioral exhaust, there's a consciousness that cannot be modeled, because it's not mechanical, it's alive. And life, by definition, is unpredictable. Life responds to the moment, not to the past. The algorithm only knows the past. It can only project forward what has already been. But you, in this moment, have the capacity to do something you've never done before. To choose differently, to break the pattern. And every time you do, the model's accuracy degrades a little more. Every time you pause before scrolling, every time you notice the impulse without obeying it, every time you close the app because you recognize you're not actually seeking connection but seeking escape, you reclaim a piece of yourself from the prediction machine. You become, in the language of the Tao, like water. Shapeless, adaptive, impossible to grasp. Remember that 3M thought we began with, the one about leaving everything behind and starting over. The algorithm didn't create that desire. It detected it. It saw the pattern in your behavior that preceded the conscious thought. The late-night scrolling sessions. The lingering on travel content. The searches for remote work opportunities you thought you were just casually browsing. And in detecting it, the algorithm tried to shape it, redirect it, monetize it. It served you content designed to intensify the yearning, then offers designed to fulfill it. Not because it cares about your liberation, but because yearning is an emotional state with high commercial value. But here's what the algorithm cannot account for. What no predictive model can ever capture: the moment you recognize its presence. The moment you see the pattern interrupt itself because you've become aware of the pattern. That recognition is the crack in the simulation. That's where your agency lives. I'm not going to tell you that awareness alone will free you. That's spiritual bypassing, and it's not true. The algorithm will continue to operate. The platforms will continue to collect your data. Neural networks will continue to predict. The infrastructure of surveillance capitalism is not going away because you meditated. But prediction is not predestination. Influence is not control. And the fact that something knows your patterns does not mean you are your patterns. You are not your behavioral history. You are not the statistical aggregate of your past choices. You are the awareness that can observe those patterns, and observation is the first step toward liberation. The practice is simple, but it requires daily commitment. Once a day, before you open any app, any platform, any feed, pause. Sit with yourself for 30 seconds. Feel your body. Notice your breath. Ask yourself, what am I seeking right now? Not what do I want to see. What am I seeking? Connection? Distraction? Validation? Novelty? Relief from boredom or anxiety or loneliness? Name it. Speak it silently to yourself. Acknowledge the seeking. And then, as you scroll, watch how the algorithm responds to that named intention. Watch it try to fulfill the seeking. Watch it offer you precisely calibrated content designed to give you the neurochemical hit you're craving. And in that watching, you reclaim the space between stimulus and response. You stop being the algorithm's subject. You become its observer. And in that role reversal, everything changes. The algorithm doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it transforms. You see it for what it is, a tool optimized for engagement, not for truth. A mirror reflecting your patterns, not your essence. Claire, the woman we met earlier, told me that after 6 months of this practice, her feed started to feel foreign. It's like the algorithm is talking to a version of me that doesn't exist anymore, she said. It's still trying to predict the old Claire. But I'm not her. I'm the one who watches her patterns. And that's a completely different person. The feed will still be there tomorrow. The predictions will still be running. But you don't have to live inside them. You can live inside the awareness that watches them arise and pass away. I am the awareness that watches the pattern. I am not the pattern itself. I choose what I feed my attention. This is not a battle you win once. This is a practice you return to, again and again. Every time you pick up your phone, every time you feel the pull, every time the algorithm serves you exactly what you didn't know you wanted, and you have to choose whether to take it or simply notice it and keep moving. Until the algorithm's voice becomes background noise, and your own inner knowing becomes the signal you trust. The feed will still be there, but you'll no longer be feeding it. You'll be feeding yourself, the part of you that can't be predicted, the part of you that's awake,